Funding for this program is provided by Annenberg CPB to advance excellent teaching.
Can new computer techniques tell if a person is an alcoholic, a manic depressive, or a schizophrenic, or if he might become one in the future? Can transplanting healthy tissue into the brain help treat disease or actually improve memory? The Behaving Brain, this time on Discovering Psychology. This is a cauliflower, a rather bland 2-pound vegetable with limited gourmet potential. And this is an adult human brain, weighing in about 3 pounds. They may look somewhat alike, but within this small, fragile mass is the most complex structure in the known universe. There are about as many cells in the brain as there are stars in our galaxy, about 10 trillion. Although they come in more than 200 different types, these cells, called neurons and glia, are all designed to do just 3 things: receive information from other cells, process it, and then transmit it to the rest of the body. All behavior begins with the actions of the neuron. First, it gathers incoming information at one end from receptors spread around its branch fibers or dendrites. Next, the information is sent to the neuron's body, or soma, where it's combined with other incoming information. Then, the entire input is passed along within the neuron's extended fiber, or axon, in the form of an electrical discharge or nerve impulse. The impulse ends up here, at the neuron's terminal buttons. These buttons contain chemicals which are subsequently released, sending in effect a chemical message to adjacent neurons. Although packed tightly together, no 2 neurons actually touch. They have to send their messages across the liquid-filled gap between them, the synaptic gap or synapse. These chemical messages are called neurotransmitters. When a neurotransmitter is released into the synapse, it attaches to specific receptor sites on the membrane of dendrites in neighboring neurons, like a key fitting precisely into the tumbler of a lock. Some synapses are excitatory. The neurotransmitters cause the neuron on the other side of the synapse to generate a nerve impulse, an electrical charge. While other synapses are inhibitory, reducing or preventing nerve impulses. The receptor channels in the dendrites determine what the effect of a neurotransmitter will be, as the sum of all excitatory and inhibitory inputs determines if the next neuron down the line will fire, and at what rate. This constant flow of nerve impulses and transmitter chemicals throughout our body gives human behavior its incredible complexity. It regulates our metabolism, temperature, and respiration. It enables us to learn, remember, and decide. So difficult to comprehend is that somehow within these nerve cells and synapses is the basis for communicating all that we can possibly know and experience. How that happens is a profound puzzle for those scientists who study the brain and behavior. They're a new breed of researchers called neuroscientists drawn from about 20 different disciplines, including psychology. Neuroscientists are guided by the assumption that everything the brain does is ultimately explainable by biological and chemical events taking place within it, either throughout the entire brain or in a particular region.
This tumor which is
For these researchers, understanding behavior means knowing its biological foundation. The brain is an integral part of the nervous system, and it works in a holistic way, with all its parts interacting, although some regions are specialized for getting particular jobs done in the most efficient way. Let's take a quick tour so we can learn our way around. First stop is the brainstem, which connects the brain to the nerves in the spinal cord. It's the center for basic life support, breathing, the beating of the heart, waking, and sleeping. Connected to the brainstem, at the back of the skull, is the cerebellum, which has the task of coordinating body movements, controlling posture, and maintaining equilibrium. Next, deep within the brain is the limbic system, which contains several structures that make up the old mammalian brain that we have in common with other mammals. It maintains the balance of the body's internal workings, its temperature, blood pressure, and sugar levels, among others. It also regulates emotions and the powerful drives of self-preservation and sexual desire. The four most important parts of the limbic system are the amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, and the thalamus. The amygdala is the pathway into the limbic system for sensory impulses. The hippocampus is a basic information processor. It matches new information to information that's already stored in the brain. It also stores some kinds of memories. The hypothalamus acts as a liaison between the body and the rest of the brain, releasing at least 7 different hormones to the pituitary gland, which in turn releases hormones into the bloodstream, influencing growth and sex. The thalamus is a relay station, sending signals from the rest of the body to the appropriate regions of the brain. Surrounding these evolutionary, older, more primitive structures that make up the limbic system is the cerebellum, in humans the largest part of the brain. It's here that nerve impulses get translated into images, symbols, words, and ideas. The cerebrum is divided into 2 halves, the cerebral hemispheres, which are connected by millions of nerve fibers that make up the corpus callosum, a conduit for messages traveling between the right and left sides of the brain. The outer layer of the cerebrum is the cortex, the familiar convoluted surface of the brain, the center of conscious thought, perception, and integration of all sensation and responses. Top management in the hierarchy of the brain's activities. To probe the secrets of all these regions of the brain require many different methods, some old, some brand new. The earliest information came from autopsies of patients with brain damage, stroke, and disease. Patients in whom certain behaviors like speech had been impaired. Later, with animals, researchers used lesioning, the precise destruction of brain tissue, in order to correlate any loss of behavioral and sensory functions with the loss of tissue in a given region of the brain. Or they stimulated a specific region with minute amounts of electrical current or chemicals. Today, the newest approach is brain imaging, which can measure the brain structure or its functioning. Imaging provides researchers, psychiatrists, and surgeons with actual pictures of the brain's inner workings. But the most widespread technique for understanding brain functions is to record the brain's electrical activity. Because neurons are biochemical electrical generators, neuroscientists have found ways to record the nerve signals coming from a single neuron as it responds to some event. The electrical activity of the entire brain can also be recorded. This brainwave pattern is known as an electroencephalogram, or EEG. It represents the total activity of the neurons in the cortex. E. Roy John, director of the Brain Research Laboratories in New York, is a leading proponent of the new science of neurometrics, the precise electrophysiological measurement of neural functioning.
We and scientists in other laboratories have looked at the electrical activity of the human brain across the age range from early childhood to old age, specifically from 6 to 90, and described the electrical activity quantitatively by analyzing it using computers. What we have found is that this electrical activity changes in a very orderly way, which can be described by simple equations. The basis of neurometrics is that every individual's brain electrical activity is compared to these normative data which we have collected across the lifespan. The way this comparison is made is statistical. The data are presented in a way which is intended to attract your attention to abnormal features because there's such an enormous amount of information that's being evaluated by the computer. So the information is color-coded. If brain electrical activity in a particular anatomical region is normal, that part of the image which the computer presents is an earth color. To the extent that there is an excess of some kind of activity in a particular region, that region becomes colored red. The more abnormal the excess, the brighter the color of red, going up to orange. If there is something lacking in an anatomical region, if it's deficient in a certain kind of activity, that region becomes colored blue. When abnormalities are present, they appear as blotches of color in certain regions. We have now patterns that identify the major psychiatric disorders, depression, dementia, schizophrenia. We can recognize alcoholism. Neurometric analysis is a functional analysis. It reveals abnormal transactions between brain regions. Those regions may interact abnormally for several reasons. One is because their anatomical structure is abnormal, which we can see. Two is because in spite of normal structure, their neurochemical reactions are abnormal, which we will see. Even with normal neurochemical capability and normal anatomical structure, the brain can enter certain states which are abnormal. For example, we had a patient come in for an examination who was a staff member here at the university, who was known to the technician who was performing the examination. Really wasn't a patient. The person came in as a member of our normal database. An examination was performed and the results were perfectly normal. After completion of the examination, the technician who knew this volunteer asked her a personal question about her boyfriend. And in fact, this person had had a very distressing rupture of her relationship with the boyfriend. While she reacted to the question, accidentally the recording continued. And that recording was paused and showed pathological depression. So here we had, in a matter of a couple of minutes, a brain move from a perfectly normal picture to a pathologically depressed picture, and in fact, a couple of minutes later, back to a perfectly normal picture. That was not abnormal neurochemical capability or structure. That was a state. And what we can see is the change of states as people think of different, as they have different moods. Almost everybody knows somebody who's been in countless years of psychotherapy with very little apparent benefit. Many of those treatment-resistant patients, in fact, have